It's been a while since I've done one of these sort of drawing and talking sessions. I called it Open Journal Radio. And I guess I still like that name. But I was feeling the need to do it again. And so here I am talking to you. I'm working on this drawing right now. I know for sure that I want the name of this drawing to be called Freedom. It's about a guy who broke out from a prison, sort of like in a sci-fi setting. But I love combining sort of naturalism and science fiction together. I think there's something really beautiful about that. Something about, the sort of the wilderness coming up against our best technology and making that like as loud as possible. I find that to be really interesting. So that's sort of the setting. The idea, though, which I guess I can explore here, is kind of just like the nature of freedom. And I guess like what freedom really is. Because freedom is obviously something that people value a lot. We say that we like it a lot, for sure. That's apparent enough. Especially in the United States of America, people, very big part of the national identity is that concept of freedom. And it's an idea that isn't, sort of funnily enough, it's not really questioned. Because I think that people, when they think of the word freedom, my association is often like the freedom to, I guess, kind of, like do whatever I want. Do what you want. And yet, I think it's clear enough that there are some ideas that people don't actually want to question because it's uncomfortable. It's like, feels unsteady. Or maybe just in the, like, maybe they don't want to question it in specific context, like for someone to sort of engage with an idea fully and give it their full time and attention, there's almost like there's a need to have a dedicated amount of resources to it. I think that's what it is. People don't want to have to waste calories thinking about something if they haven't like set out or decided to do so in themselves. So if you're trying to explain a concept that may be a little more, like require a little more meta-analysis, it's a lot to ask of someone to go there with you. They got other stuff going on in their day. They're thinking about how they're going to feed their family, their work, what's going on at work, some other thing. Sort of survival stuff, I guess. But, I don't know, I think it's a good question because why do I think it's a good question? To question what freedom is. Because it's apparently it's something that we really want. And if you were to like, excuse me, if you were to be participating in something that you didn't choose, it's a lot harder to care, honestly, about it. I'm going to go ahead and start replacing this with some micron lines. The reason why I'm erasing this graphite is because probably some other areas you might see on the paper, I'm enjoying this like micron cross-hatching effect. And I think the graphite, it's good, but it also rubs off in my hands a lot. And I think I'm not going to try to totally get rid of the graphite in the finished piece. I kind of like the idea of there being like a sense of it having been there. But I'm going to try to mostly replace all these lines with ink. Anyways, yeah, and this is my favorite part. actually adding the lines, because you get to get really small in there in the details. Love it. But anyways, we're talking about freedom. And why it's difficult for people to participate in something if they didn't feel like they had a choice to do it. They chose. I'm not really sure why that is. Because at the root of everything, it's not like anyone chose to be born. It's funny, when I sell art in the street, this idea comes up a lot. And I'll say that no one chose to be born. And people kind of have a lot of surprisingly mixed reactions to that. Which I think is interesting. Because they'll say things like, well, I don't know, maybe I chose to be born. And it's just like a really weird way to think about, I don't know, like life or consent and things like that. Like, I don't think that's how consent works, in the sense, like, if I don't remember that I consented to something, then did I consent to it? Like, maybe a previous version of myself consented to it, but that doesn't mean that, like, this version did. And even then, I don't know, it's interesting to think about, like, my life predicated on someone else's decision, even if it's like a past version of myself. But that's also interesting because my life is very much contingent upon things that happened before me, you know? Like, even in a very deep sense, me drawing right now. It's like, of course I'm drawing right now because I've decided, some previous version of me decided to put a lot of time and effort into drawing. And the more time and effort that I put into this thing, the more that I get out of it. And the further down this road, this journey of drawing I go down. But at an initial cause, like if it's a chain of an infinite series of causes, the original cause of what initiated my experience of enjoying drawing, yeah, it would be difficult for me to say that I consented to my love of drawing. I don't really feel as though I chose it. Now, I think that obviously the word like consent, these are really heavy words, but I think they're applicable words. It basically just has to do with like sovereignty and choice and free will and these sorts of things. But it's interesting because when I say like I didn't consent to love drawing, it's evokes humor in me because I guess it makes me, I normally associate, I guess, consent honestly with like very like honestly like sexual acts, and then also like acts of like pretty profound personal choice. Whereas something like drawing carries with it, it's a playful activity, to be honest. At the core of it, I'm playing. It's just that I'm an adult, and so the way that adults play is pretty precise, or can be precise, when you get to certain high levels of play. Like me putting tiny little lines here, like the more that you do it, if you want to have more fun, you have to increase the fidelity or the detail of your form of play. And it's interesting because the more that is true, you increase the quote unquote like level of play, we'll say, and you get more and more skilled at whatever it is, then I don't know, it's interesting to me because it's still innately about having fun and enjoying it, but obviously it turns into something very different than someone who's never picked up a pen or like really tried really hard to draw and they were to draw. there's something different that's happening here. Maybe not always true, actually. Maybe there are some people that just pick up a pen and like immediately can do it and have a good time doing it. But the way that I think about it, it's like watching like a deer run through a forest. What do I mean by that? I guess like what I mean by that, I'm gonna sneeze, hang on. Ooh, I'm gonna sneeze. No, I'm not gonna sneeze. What I mean by that, I guess, is it's effortless. There's there's just like an incredible amount of beauty in it. And it's natural. It's just doing what nature does, but it's profoundly nimble, graceful, strong. Even it's intelligent in the way that it moves through the environment, right? You don't often see deer tripping over stuff the way that we do. I guess that's kind of what I mean by, I don't know if I mean anything specific right now, but when I'm thinking about what drawing has become for me, the experience is like it as a natural expression of my being. And this relates back to freedom in the way that it relates to freedom in the sense that how does it relate to freedom? Oh, I remember. It relates to freedom because when I'm drawing, I feel the most free. And then strangely, though, it's also when I feel the least sort of traditionally in control. So it seems that often I think freedom and control are incorrectly, I'll say like equivocated, to use a big word. I don't know if that's even technically a big word, but people often think of them, I think, incorrectly as the same thing. As in, to be free is to have control over one's life. But the issue with that is that all the things that make me feel the most free is actually, it feels like I'm giving up control, if I were to be honest. And in fact, the things that I try to have the most control over are the things that actually feel like they imprison me. Which is interesting. Like if I feel as though something has to happen, right? Like, yeah, literally anything. In a sense, there is a form of like imprisonment to it, right? Like my life has to play out a certain way. Or like this relationship has to be this way. Or has to continue. Or I have to love drawing, like any of that sort of thing. As soon as I'm thinking of it in these terms, immediately it actually becomes a prison. And I'm no longer free. So that's an interesting little paradox, I guess, is that we all want freedom, but often what we think freedom is the very thing which takes away our freedom, which is hilarious, to be honest. And there's probably no escaping the fact that we're gonna, lose track of all that and forget about it. Like there's no escaping the fact that as deep of an understanding as I feel to have about the nature of freedom and oh, control is the opposite of freedom, and letting things be as they are is ultimately the only thing that I can do. Well, it's almost like there's nothing to do. It's just letting the world be as it is. And that's freedom. Then, I don't know, it's interesting to me because it seems that as soon as I realize that, at least in my mind, I can become extremely attached to remembering this concept. And it's like, oh, freedom is an illusion. And to really be free is to understand that I'm not free. Really. And then it just goes back in on itself. So I'm kind of a couple layers deep into this now, and I'm like, not sure if anyone's following me. May or may not be following me. But I think the concept still stands. But I guess this drawing, I kind of want this drawing to be about kind of like the ruthlessness of towards the drive to be free. Yeah. I want this drawing to be about how despite circumstances, despite limitations, despite everything, life must be free. And it's not like, probably the deeper thought is life, if life must be free, in a sense, it's like life is always free. That is the underlying principle of honestly everything. Everything is completely free to do as it does. Even like the physical laws of nature, like gravitational constant and the strong electron force, and electromagnetism and electromagnetic radiation, and how that dissipates through space. All these things that we feel, or that just are observed to be constant, it's like they're free to do that. We call them laws. And I think that laws evoke a feeling of like a police officer who's going to come get you, Don't break the law. You can't break the law, otherwise punishment. Yeah, that's what a law represents. So it's interesting because we describe nature like we say the laws of nature. And I think as soon as we say the laws of nature, we think of some sort of like cosmic policeman who's like keeping the universe in check, or us in check, or something, like as if there's a cosmic jail where if particles didn't behave naturally, then they would go there or something. I don't know if that's actually what people think, but that is like the idea. It's definitely what's, at least in my mind, associated with the concept of law. It's like law's an absolute rule that if you break, there are punishments. And this is what keeps the world going around. And there are a lot of conversations actually about corporal punishment and rethinking justice and stuff like that, but that's not really the scope of this conversation. But it is very fascinating. to try to reimagine how we conceive of prison and kind of just like the very foundation of our judicial system. Yeah, again, to be honest, I'm not really equipped to explore that right now. I think that's also a question of a lot of like real life. It's interesting because you can talk about philosophy all you want, and then as soon as you start trying to apply it to people's lives, that's when it becomes reality, and you need a lot of data and research, and then even then, no matter what you do, as soon as you're in the business of imprisoning people, and it's basically just like people's autonomy and stuff, having to make sentences, and there's probably no escaping the reality of injustice, and I don't know, it's difficult, it's painful. Making those decisions is simultaneously, it is fascinating to me to think about, but it's also something where I guess it's like there's a reason why I'm an artist, why I like drawing. It kind of brings me to the concept of peace. And what peace is. I think that peace is the result of freedom. Maybe just because I've been on the concept of freedom, but I'll explain what I mean. Peace is the feeling you get when there's nothing else to be done. When you're finished. When you realize, oh yeah, this is sufficient. Sort of like that out breath, it's like, oh yeah. Nothing to be done. Nothing to be done about that. Let's just rest. Yeah, it's good. It's a good day today, That's the feeling of peace. It's a good day today. And just like every other emotion, it's temporary. No one ever said anything was supposed to be forever. Well, that's not true. Some people say that. They don't realize it maybe, but they might say it too. Very explicitly. I don't know. But it's obvious enough if you look around the world that nothing lasts forever. That's just not the way this works. So, to be at peace isn't something that you arrive at and then, wow, now I'm just at peace forever. It seems more likely that peace is an experience that you can work on cultivating and seeking out based on the way that you think about the world or see the world or whatever. But it's not fundamentally I don't know. No feeling is like an identity. Identity in and of itself is pretty made up anyways, and gets us, that's a whole other can of worms, but when you actually are free and you experience true freedom, you are at peace. Because freedom is what is already here right now. The things that challenge freedom are just the thoughts that we have about what's going on. And it's interesting because it's basically either we are struggling to accept something in our life. There's something in our life that's going on that we cannot accept. And so we are not free. Because we're constantly doing battle, like, in our own mind, like trying to change a person's nature. Trying to change reality, you know? Probably most clearly, this always happens in, like, romantic relationships, I think. Maybe I'm just speaking from personal experience, but I think it's true. Romantic relationships and the families that are often built around them. Because we really desire each other to be a certain way for us. There's a certain way that we want the world to be. And we have a partner. You have a significant other. And we give them our heart. And we trust them with our feelings. And so the way that they behave directly influences the way that we feel. We don't often give people this power to make us feel this much, you know? And it's a pretty fascinating thing, actually, that, like, humans do this. That we want other people to be in control of our lives, in a way, you know? Like, we want someone to have a very deep and profound say over how it is that we feel. Which is so interesting, because it's like, there's probably no other sort of relationship that actually is that way, presumably? Is that true? I don't know. It probably is more that I'm just not thinking of. It probably has a lot to do with, honestly, it's like the pleasure, there's a certain type of pleasure that you can get only by, like, completely surrendering to someone. Surrendering to something. Surrendering in general. Completely giving up control. So it's interesting. It kind of goes back to this concept of freedom, where true freedom is giving up control in your life and seeing what's already there, which brings you peace, which is the natural state of all things. Everything is fundamentally free. There's no cosmic police officer that's telling someone what to do all the time. The world is just doing as it does. And out of that, there naturally was born life and humans and all the other creatures on Earth alive today. It was all effortless. It was just a natural result of the way things are. And so it seems that when we, when we fall in love with somebody, I think we really desire for it to be natural. Of course we do. We want to just love each other, you know? We want them to love us. We want them to love. I don't know. Definitely, I can just speak for myself. Like, I want to be at peace. And therefore, I want my significant other to be at peace. This all makes sense. it also makes sense from like an evolutionary perspective. Because I can very easily imagine a world where, you know, like if the people around you aren't at peace, there must be something wrong, right? Like there must be something wrong. Either there's not enough food, or there's some sort of disease, or any number of things, right? Something that's threatening our survival. Those impacts on our survival directly impact our capacity to feel peace. And so naturally it would feel good to want to have everyone in our tribe to feel at peace. And so when something's not at peace, okay, let's figure out how to solve that. You know, how do we return to peace? And, you know, good feelings are good probably because they always point back to life perpetuating itself, surviving. But when it comes to especially our significant other, our loved ones, the people that we're supposed to be reproducing with, right? Creating families, life. That's like the deepest, most intimate aspect of life, is those mechanisms that reproduce life. We wouldn't be here after billions of years if reproduction wasn't the most important part of our life in a way, like or at least emotionally significant aspect of our life. And so all that being said, I think it makes sense that we want to give other people control over our lives. Because surrendering to kind of like the way that things are is the only way that we can feel the most good. I think it's because the world naturally is completely out of control. Like that's obvious enough to see, especially when you have natural disasters or, you know, some like tragedies of any sort, random tragedies. But even like those serendipitous moments. But it's interesting because we often think of the serendipitous moments of meeting someone at a party or running into a friend on the street or whatever it is, right? Like we always think of the serendipitous moments of we had some sort of control over that experience, right? Like, oh, it's because of the way that I am and the way that I spoke to that person. That's why we're friends. And there's a reason why you're friends. There's a reason why you fell in love with that person, whatever, right? And it's interesting because, I mean, there definitely are reasons why you fell in love or why you like this person or that person. But I think that if you follow the thread all the way back as to like, why do I like that? You know what I mean? Then it's a lot more difficult to know why. Probably we don't have control over how we feel. I'd say definitely. Personally, I don't think we do. So it seems that when we align to the reality of the fact that we don't have control, that feels really great because it's the truth. I guess I also have this belief that truth feels good. Even when it hurts, it feels good, in the sense that we always want to know the truth. Even when people delude themselves into believing that they don't want to know the truth, and they want to live in ignorance, I mean, they can say that, but somewhere along the line, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I knew this guy, and I was saying, like, all we ever want to know is the truth. I was probably literally just talking about this exact same concept. And he said, I forget the name of the song, like Sam Smith's song, but it's like called like Stay With Me. It's like, stay with me, 'cause you're all I need. This ain't love, it's clear to see, but won't you stay with me? And that's the song. And he would quote his song, he's like, nah, dude, I'm like Sam Smith, like, just stay with me, you know? Just, I know it's not love, but just stay with me. But it's interesting because I believe that if you were to be honest and examine it, you could see, like, how sustainable is that? How long is that actually going to last? You don't really want that, do you? You want them to really truthfully love you. So it's, I don't know, it's a tricky little, that truth element, you know? It's kind of, I would say it's tragic in a way, but it's actually, I don't know, to me it's kind of beautiful. We don't have control over any of this. No control. But I do think that we owe the truth. Now, I think me feeling and desiring, wanting to be committed to truth, I don't think I have control over that. Some people are less committed to truth. Maybe they haven't realized how good it feels to live in truth or whatever, right? I don't know. People, there's many different ways to survive in the world. I guess I just happen to believe that completely relinquishing control over the truth is the most enjoyable way to be. And also, like, the only actual, even if we're not aware of it, it is the only actual way to exist. Anyways, I think I've talked a lot. I'm sort of not like running out of steam necessarily, but I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles now. I can talk about the drawing some more. This guy broke out of jail and he's going through this swamp, and I want it to look really like gross and dangerous. And I guess I want the impression on his face to like embody that sort of animal, that primal desire for freedom, where we will do anything possible to be free. If we believe that our environment is imprisoning us, we will dig until our fingernails fall off to get out. It's interesting, obviously, because it's not necessarily true. Like, you know, a lot of people submit to their circumstances, but it's interesting because the way in which people will submit is different. There's a form of submission to, like, being in jail, for example, that isn't actually accepting your reality. It's like denying reality. Like, you're like, I'm in jail and I hate everything, and like, whatever, like, this is my life now, and you're like bitter and angry. Like, you're not truly accepting what's going on. You sort of just gave up. So apparently there's a difference in giving up and acceptance in a certain sense. Probably, you know, a lot of this is semantic, but I've met people that have been in prison and they explained to me the experience of becoming what they called like enlightened, realizing like, oh, there's nothing I can do. And it's almost like a relief. Like, oh yeah, this is my life now. I'm in jail. And like, let's figure out what this is all about. So that's like accepting versus someone who's stuck somewhere and they're constantly just like cursing everything and they hate it all. But like, they're not actually necessarily doing anything to leave, you know, or to get out of it. They're just sort of lamenting the whole situation kind of constantly. So it's like complaining without actual progression or something like that. Yeah. Anyways, probably the end of this video. I can't really think of anything else to say. Or I just don't really want to say anything else. I just want to draw. So I'll leave you there. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you have a good day. Hope you experience freedom and peace. And I love you, and I don't know who you are, but I hope you're good. All right, bye-bye.